For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Caroline Bowditch, and I have the honour and privilege of being the CEO at Arts Access Victoria. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with AAV, we are the state's peak body for arts and disability. And we are one of the peak body organisations involved in delivering the Sustaining Creative Workers program in the state in collaboration with Regional Arts Victoria and many other peak bodies. And it's a real pleasure to have you all here this afternoon. Want to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting, well, I'm coming to you from the lands of the Boonwurrung people, the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and to any First Nations colleagues that might be joining us in this space today. We are attempting to make this session as accessible as possible. So we have the fabulous Susan and Amber as our Auslan interpreters, and we also have live captioning with a real person available to anybody that might need it. So if you would like to access the captioning, just head to the bottom of your screen and click on the little CC live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. And you should be able to access the captions there. We are recording today's session for anyone that can't be with us. So hopefully that's okay. Again, please feel free to, we would ask that you keep your microphone on mute throughout the session unless you have a question, and feel free to switch your camera off if you would rather do that and that was more comfortable for you. I'd like to introduce some of my colleagues who are going to be speaking to you at various times throughout the afternoon. So I'd like to introduce Aisha, who lots of you will have had contact with. Aisha's been sending out all of the Zoom links and doing lots of behind the scenes work. And also Phil, Sarah, who is with us but has her camera off, and Tanya, who are our three advisors at AAV, and also want to welcome Amelia Kingston from Regional Arts Victoria, who is the program manager, so has the joyous job of managing all the peak bodies and all the applications that we are receiving and managing at the moment. So this afternoon really is an information session to give you some more detail about the Sustaining Creative Workers program. As I mentioned, we are one of the peak bodies involved in delivering the program on behalf of Regional Arts Victoria and Creative Victoria. And we're really excited because there is specific ring-fenced funding for deaf and disabled applicants. And today is very much focused, although not limited to deaf and disabled applicants, but we'll be focusing our attention there this afternoon. I want to now hand over to Amelia to give us some more background into what the Sustaining Creative Workers program is all about, why it's come about, what does it fund, and who is it for? So over to you, Amelia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to have you here. I'm coming to you today from Jadwajali and Djabwurrung country in the Grampians Garrawerd. It's lovely to be here. So the Sustaining Creative Workers initiative supports the continued work of Victoria's independent creative practitioners and workers who have been impacted by coronavirus in 2021. This is the second iteration of the program following an initial round of support offered in 2020. Sustaining Creative Workers will deliver quick response funding to independent creative practitioners, sole traders, freelancers, collectives, groups, and micro-organisations and businesses whose work and livelihoods who have been affected by coronavirus. This includes practitioners and organisations who work in support roles for creative activities. We acknowledge that the grants through the state government have been often pigeonholed just for artists or sole traders, and have also targeted those with GST status. This is not the case with this grants. If you do not have GST status, you are still eligible to apply for this grant. Sustaining Creative Workers is funded by the Victorian Government through Creative Victoria and is administered in an industry advisory group comprising of representatives from the sector. It supports creatives across all creative disciplines to continue their work in their creative field, adapt to change, research and develop projects, develop their products or skills, and or connect with new audiences or markets. The first round of the program opened on Friday, October the 15th, and the closing date for this round is the 22nd of November 2021. If you are a First Nations person, we encourage you to get in touch. I will put the address in the chat, but it is grants, grants, at rav.net.au if you haven't already been contacted by Creative Victoria. So with the Sustaining Creative Workers Initiative, we're aiming to deliver quick response funding to Victorian independent creatives and micro-organisations, those employing under 5 people, provide stability and improve sustainability of independent creative practice so that newly emerged environmental context is possible to adapt to. And we're aiming to achieve statewide reach. Now, as Caroline said before, 20% of that funding, which works out to nearly $1 million, is earmarked solely for deaf and disabled creatives. Within the things that you can apply for planning, adapting, relaunching work, research and product development, products or skills development, exploration of new ways to engage audiences with existing work, and or development or exploration of markets for your creative work. Given the uncertain environment around COVID, we've made it so that public outcomes and or presentations are not required as part of this program or as part of the acquittal should you be successful. Caroline, would you like me to continue with who can apply, or should I hand back over to you?
Yeah, you talk about who can apply, and then I'll talk about who's assessing.
Okay, cool. So Sustaining Creative Workers accepts applications from Victorian-based independent creative practitioners, sole traders, freelancers, collectives, groups, micro-organisations and businesses that have been negatively impacted by coronavirus. Now, in the last iteration of this program for 2020, there was a requirement to have 5 years experience to apply for this. However, for 2021, that has been abandoned. You do not have to have 5 years experience. You merely have to have been affected by coronavirus as a creative. There are not particular limitations on the creative disciplines involved. If you're a visual artist, a craft artist, literature, contemporary dance and performance, creative practice in the community, circus, cabaret, sound art, theatre, light art, fashion, design, screen and digital games, multidisciplinary and or experimental work, all of those are eligible. Within the application, you will be asked to submit an ABN. With the ABN, and I would earmark this as really important, you need to make sure your ABN is listed as a Victorian ABN. We've had a number of applications that have a different state tagged to them. They've been registered in another state. And if that is so, and you enter that ABN, it will make the application ineligible, pardon me. You really need to make sure that your ABN is Victorian listed. The other very important part with this is that if you go for one of the grants for $5,000 as a sole trader, that your ABN reflects this. Conversely, if you are going for the $10,000 grant as a micro-organisation or as a business, collective or group, your ABN must also reflect this. You must have, when you fill out the ABN part on the form, the correct status in order with the correct box that you've ticked for who you are. So the sole trader must say sole trader in the ABN. The collective must say collective or group, business or organisation in the ABN. However, if you are unable to enter an ABN, you are able to enter an auspice organisation to manage your grant. Also, individuals must be Australian citizens currently residing in Victoria, unless, of course, you are stranded in another state due to COVID, and or a permanent resident holding the appropriate visa. For clarification, if you are a New Zealand resident and you have lived here since prior to 2001, you already have this status and you are eligible to apply. However, if you are a resident after 2001 from New Zealand, you must have applied for permanent resident holding appropriate visa status. If you are an individual under 18, you must have an auspice organisation. Your auspice must be an organisation, not your parent. I'll hand over to you, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Amelia. That's brilliant. Okay. And just to say, for those of you that we're going to talk a bit more about auspicing a bit later on, but just to say at this point that Arts Access Victoria is an auspicing body along with Auspicious Arts, and there are several others, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Thank you. Amelia, I'm conscious that we haven't got you for a very long time, and we've already had a question about whether you could explain what affected by COVID means in the definition.
Sure. Yep, can do. So to define that, I would best give you an example. So for instance, I'm a potter. All of my markets over the past 18 months have been affected and or cancelled. So in that way, that has affected my income to the tune of probably $60,000. Whereabouts some others are performing artists and have been unable to perform in public and have not had those ticket sales generated. So that has thereby affected their income. However, some artists are more practitioners that do not generate an income in that way. If you have been affected, let's say, by an exhibition cancellation, a performance cancellation, travel cancellation due to, that was for artistic practice, of course, that has also been cancelled, all of those things are affected, mean that you were affected by COVID. It's extremely broad, just as we have the scope for this grant is also broad in terms of arts practice, so is affected by COVID. I will also in the chat, I'll put that email address. You're welcome to email that address and I can answer any questions further if you need to down the track.
Fantastic. So it could also, Amelia, be something like if you've had to completely shift direction in terms of your artwork or being able to continue your arts practice and you've had to, using the horrible word, pivot what you do, and therefore you're acquiring new skills or need new equipment, that would also count as being affected by COVID. Is that right?
100%, definitely affected by COVID.
Perfect. Brilliant. So as Amelia mentioned, there is almost $1 million up for grabs by deaf and disabled artists, which is more money than we've ever had allocated to us in this state. So there is something incredibly exciting about that, and makes me super positive. The other great thing is that every applicant can nominate who assesses their application. So if you want your, so Arts Access Victoria has worked with Regional Arts Victoria to nominate a number of assessors that we work with that are familiar with us, and we're familiar with and we trust and have a relationship with, and they are our assessors. We don't influence their assessment, but we absolutely have recommended them as assessors. And so as an applicant, you can nominate which assessment panel you want your application to be reviewed by. each application is reviewed by 2 people. So you can nominate one and then the other one might be random, or you might be able to, I think that's right, isn't it, Millie? You can't nominate 2, but you can definitely nominate 1.
That's correct, Caroline. You can definitely nominate one, but the next allocation will be at random. However, as the person allocating those applications, I definitely try very hard to make sure that I associate those applications with the correct assessor.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. While Amelia's with us, are there other questions that we can ask her? Let me just let you know a little bit about what's coming up. So Phil is going to talk to us about the Smarty Grants application form, how to answer the main questions on that. Sarah's going to talk to us about preparing a bio and how AAV can support you in preparing that or preparing your application. Tanya's going to talk to us about ABNs and auspicing. What is it? Who's it for? What does it mean? And then we'll have space for some final questions. So there's another question in the chat, Amelia, that I'll just read out, which is, I'm getting a few mixed messages regarding PR status. I'm a Kiwi and did the forms and everything for PR, permanent residence, I'm assuming PR is, but opted out from paying $8,000 as I'm married to an Australian, have property, etc. I arrived here in 2005. I've asked people a couple of times and have been told as long as I have an ABN, it's okay.
Hi, that one is really quite specific in our guidelines in that you must have PR status or be an Australian citizen. In terms of having a husband that is Australian that you're married to, that one is one that you would have to check if that changed your PR status or citizenship status with the gosh, it's gone out of my brain, the body that enables people to become permanent residents. I can't remember what they're called though. Sorry, that's gone out of my head. Does anyone, Tanya or Caroline, can you remember what they're called? It's gone out of my brain.
No.
No, sorry. Oh.
But Anya, I'm wondering if Amelia, you might be able to follow up with Anya, or if Anya can contact you directly on that email address. Maybe there's a follow-up to that. Okay. Temporary resident. 444 special category visa.
Yep. It must be PR or it must be Australian citizen. There's another question. In this case, is the Mornington Peninsula considered regional or metro? Oh, isn't that a hot issue? In this case, it would be considered metro because it goes on LGAs. I don't have the say over that one, sorry. The next question, the criteria is so broad. How do you judge each application in a fair manner given the varied disciplines? I agree, it is extremely broad. So the criteria and the guidelines list how we will be marking those. It partially is on creative merit, on practice in the past, and the ability to demonstrate that. The next 3 things are how you were affected by COVID is very important to put into your application. Second, how the money will be used and how that money being used will assist you to sustain your practice right now and going forward. So those 4 things are the key parts that the criteria list as what we will be considering the applications against.
So they're much more personalised, aren't they, than just a generic application form? It's really looking at, those specific things. Ruth has asked a brilliant question, Amelia, about can you apply for funding across a few different purposes, i.e. funding paid rehearsals for upcoming performances, the recording of demos for a new album, and the purchase of equipment for the purpose of said recording at home?
Yes, you can. All of those are eligible. And yes, you could apply for those within one application. I would be wary of having too many things within an application, in that it is, even though it's wonderful that there is this much money in this grant round, $5,000 doesn't extend an awful long way. So we would encourage people to list it down to 3 main purposes if they have multiple ideas, and recognise that budgeting for those things, even though this grant doesn't require you to submit a budget, you will need to consider how far $5,000 will really go.
And just to add to that, Amelia, that's brilliant. So something also to remember is that as a deaf and disabled artist, you can apply for an extra $2,500 if any of those things that you need are related to your access. So for example, if you need to buy a specific piece of equipment to create greater access for you, then that is potentially could go into an access budget. So really think about potentially the total that you can apply for is $7,500 if you're bringing access into your budget at all.
Yes,
I'm going to ask one more question, Amelia, while you're here, which Rosanna has asked. Could you please explore how applications from businesses demonstrate they have been affected by COVID? A reduction in income, question, over what time period?
So, Rosanna, for that one, businesses that we've seen applications from are demonstrating their income loss, but also potential. For instance, I have some galleries that have applied. They have been able to illustrate the different cancellations that have then affected their business. And from that has then gone on to either affect income or has incurred loss. It is very important to remember within this grant that even though you would illustrate how you had potentially lost or not been able to make money in that time period, that you cannot apply for funding for retrospective items or retrospective time periods for exhibitions, any of those things. It must be funding to sustain you right now and into the future. Over what time period, Rosanna? Over the past 18 months. However, we have some that are written within just this year. So that's fine as well. It's really just about demonstrating how COVID has affected you rather than the time period. Because as we know, for some of us, COVID, especially in its first iteration with our first lockdowns, for some of us that didn't affect us as much. However, in the second lockdown, a third, and all the others, that this has affected other people in different ways. So it's very individual in that way, and the application makes space for that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amelia. I think that's all the questions for now. So we could let you slip off into whatever you have to do next. And the AAV team will hang here and there'll be more opportunity to ask questions later on. But thanks for your time this afternoon, Amelia, and no doubt you will get many emails from the cohort here, but also from our team that might get more questions too. Thanks so much.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. And feel free to email me if you have anything you'd like me to clarify. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Amelia.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Brilliant. There's some great questions, and it's always fantastic to bounce them around and try and get as specific as we can in answering them. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Phil, who's going to just talk a bit about the Smarty Grants application, which we know isn't accessible to everyone and is a bit of a nightmare. And we are dealing with that in further grants to come. But yeah, we Phil is going to navigate us through Smarty Grants and yeah, how do we answer the main questions that are in the form? So over to you, Phil.
Thanks, Caroline. Hello, everyone. Yes, Smarty Grants, as many of you will know, it isn't the most accessible format for anyone really, but there have been some adjustments made for this one, so it is a little less annoying than the usual ones. The big thing, which is I find exciting, is that you don't need to do a budget for these ones. So it's literally just click little boxes that says what you're going to spend the money on. But the main thing that you really that I want to explain to everyone today is about answering that main question, because there's a whole bunch of little tick boxes that ask you various questions, about your background and things like that. Whether you've had any more support from government supports. Actually, that's something I'll need to check in later on about that. If people have got Victorian government support already, are they still eligible for this one?
Hi, Phil, it's Tanya. Yeah, they are. They can't be in receipt. So if businesses have been accessing some of the Victorian government COVID business funding, some of those businesses are then ineligible for these grants. So it's a good idea to click on the preview the application form in Smarty Grants, and at the end it'll have a few little eligibility check boxes, which shows you which of the grants through the Vic government that make you ineligible for these grants.
Thanks, Tanya. And excuse my squeaky chair, everyone, if that's annoying you in the background. Yes, it's an issue. Anyway, yes, so the form that we have here is they've done what they can so far to make it a little more accessible and a little more easy for people. But as I say, most of for the way through, you're just either adding in like dates for your project to start and end date, the project title. There is a short description for your project as well, just a couple of sentences for that one. Don't get too caught up on that one. Basically, what they use that for is if you're successful, they'll use that description when they're telling the public, who's received these funds. So it could be something as simple as to assist Phil with maintaining his visual arts practice or something over the next 6 months or something like that, like something very simple. So yeah, don't get too caught up on that one. A lot of people think they need to sort of explain their project in that, but not really at all. As I say, you go through and there's various click boxes here. The grant will assist my creative practice in the following ways: planning and adapting and relaunching work, research and professional development. There are two things you can also do: products or skills development, exploration of new ways to engage audiences or existing or new work, and develop or explorations of markets for your creative work. So you can really go to town with this grant and do stuff that maybe you wouldn't have the opportunity to do within a normal sort of project-based kind of funding round. And that's the thing to keep in mind with these ones, is that this money is here to help you sort of get through this sort of weird particular point in history that we're all in, which is, when, as Amelia said, things are very sort of touch and go, and when no one's ever sure what's going to happen next. So this money here is here to sort of keep you going while we sort of work out what COVID normal actually does look like, and then we can sort of probably, maybe settle down a bit again in the future there. So yeah, as Amelia also said, public outcomes and things aren't necessarily required here. If you do have an ability to do that, by all means, go ahead, because we need as many of those as we can. But if you're not, as Amelia was saying earlier, if something's been sort of derailed by COVID or something like that, and you've got time to spend like doing research on alternative markets for things, or trying to change things so that you can remount it in a different way, this is your opportunity to do that with this particular funding round. Now, there's one big question in here, which is where is the written response to tell us what you're aimed to do during the funded period, and how it will assist you to sustain and or develop your creative practice. So you can do this. You can submit this question in either a text format using the Smarty Grants form here, or you can upload a video that you've done. And that's the text-based thing is 400 words limit, which is, you know, in old sort of talk, maybe just over a page of handwritten words. And the video needs to be no longer than 3 minutes. So yeah, keep those ones in mind there. When I talk to people and help them with grant applications, the main thing I like to get across to people are a few things, actually. First of all, the people that will be reading your applications will be other artists. So they're not going to be bureaucrats or anything like that, but they may not necessarily be from your art form, but there will be other artists. So they're your peers. So what you need to keep in mind for this is be as clear as possible about what you're wanting here, and make everything readable, make everything really sort of understandable. And as I say, because even though there are other artists who are actually assessing your thing, perhaps the visual artist doesn't really know what a musician's gonna do, you know. So one of the things to sort of think about there is avoid using art speak and things like that, and sort of real language that's sort of very specific to an art form. Try and avoid that, so that you know, pretend your mum's going to read it, and you know, she maybe doesn't really know exactly what you do, but today is the day you're going to actually say, "Here, mum, here's what I'm doing," and they're going to give you some money to help you do it. So keep that sort of thing in mind, I think. The other thing I also like to really underline with people, because and I understand the sort of anxieties here, is funding bodies like Creative Victoria, Australia Council, etc. They're not Centrelink, so they're not anyone to be scared of. They're not anyone to, you know, worry that they're going to come after you, get the money back, and do horrible things, anything like that. Arts funders want to give you the money. They really, really want to give that money away. So, you know, they're happy for you to receive it and to use it as best you can. So just keep that in mind, and don't have any of that anxiety that, you know, that you might get if you're a Centrelink, someone that has to access Centrelink. Now with the main question is, what I like to tell people to do is, in the lead up to when you actually write out your grant response or make your video, keep a little notebook or a piece of paper somewhere that you can keep coming back to, or even on your phone, wherever you like to do it. And just keep noting down the things that come into your head, you know, and they could be the most sort of tangential things ever, but things that you think are important to put into your grant application, note them down as you go through your day. If it comes to your head, oh, I better put that onto the list. And once you've got a bit of a list together of things that you think are important for your application, you'll be able to sort of form that into a nice sort of ordered kind of thing. And the best way to sort of order your description is basically sort of start saying who and what you are, what you do, what's sort of happened with COVID and how things might have, you know, derailed you or gotten away, or you know, all the things that Amelia explained. And then go on to say how this money, if you were to receive it, how is it going to benefit you? How is this going to help you get through to over the next few months as an artist? You know, it really can be all the things that we've mentioned before. So it doesn't have to be any kind of outcome. It could be literally, I'm going to research how to, you know, where I'm going to sell my book, or where I'm going to, you know, what galleries will be, you know, sort of adjusting to COVID in various creative ways. Perhaps you want to make connections with them, all sorts of things. So it really is a very, very broad and I forgot the word. You know, it's broad, basically. But yeah, break down your what you want to do into some clear points, and you can either you can actually put them in as dot points if you'd like to do that, if you prefer to do that. But when you do that dot point thing, try and get it into a good order, like I say. So you sort of start with, this is what I do, and work through it and go, this is where I want to be by the end of that thing, of that funding period. As also Amelia, I think, mentioned, you can actually do it as a video response if you'd rather. That's 3 minutes worth. Some people find that it's easier if they have somebody interviewing them and maybe asking a question. So you can do that. If you really are having issues with any of this, give us email us. I'll put my email in the chat here later on. And we should be able to sort of give you a little bit of help with that there. Just, and if you need any assistance with uploading a video to the Smarty Grants portal. But once again, when you're making a video, try have some notes there as well. So you just basically reading the notes that you have. But as I say, put it in a nice order that, you know, people can understand what it is that you're actually asking for in your application. I think that's pretty much it, really, for as far as what to do. As I say, if people want to have a chat with me or whatever, and, you know, and ask any questions about this, please do. As I say, I'll put my email in the chat here in a moment, and you can just email me and let me know. And if we need to have a phone chat, we can arrange that as well, or a Zoom or something like that. Yeah, I think that's about it from me.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Thanks so much. And will share all of our contact details after this session, along with a link to the video for this session, so that we can you can view anything in the follow-up. There are questions coming in thick and fast in the chat. So I am wondering whether we launch to Tanya, I'm looking to you. Should we carry on with our plan and then come back to questions? That's what we've said, isn't it? So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Sarah, who's going to talk to us about preparing your bio and what's required for this application. Yeah, and what support you can get from AAV, which Phil has already given us some insights into. So over to you, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. It's Sarah Hubolt here. I have my video off and there is a headshot of me on the screen at the moment. So when you're looking at the bio is short for biography, and it's the only support material that this application process asks for. Most of us will have a bio or need a bio in your arts practice. So a bio is used for promoting yourself. It's used for grant applications. It's used on websites for marketing material. So it has quite a broad reach in terms of who reads your bio. In this particular situation, you're applying for a grant. So your peers will be reading your bio. The assessors will be reading the bio. It may or may not, depending on what Regional Arts Victoria does, they may put your bio on a website or put it in a funding report to Creative Victoria. But essentially, the hot tips for writing a bio is to sell yourself. Use active language. I am this. Put your stake in the ground and go, I'm a dancer, I'm a circus performer, I'm a musician. Open with a leading sentence of who you are, what is your role? And what this does is it demonstrates that you're a professional artist or arts worker or technician, wherever you are placed in our arts landscape. Make your bio relevant to the application. So if you're applying for a creative development funding, what is it in your history or current working life that shows the assessors that this is feasible and makes sense in terms of what you're applying for? This is your chance. This is your support material. So you're like, why should you be given the money? Who are you? And how are you connected to what you do? So make it relevant. Make your bio current. Instead of saying 7 years ago I did this, say, you know, in 2013, 2014, I did this, so that you can use this bio over and over again for different situations. Look at what you've done. So look at any awards that you've received, what study you've done, or what experience you've had in your art form, in your artistic career so far. We often talk to a lot of artists who are a little bit nervous about writing their bios or underconfident in writing your bio, because it can be really hard to sell yourself. It's like you look at the computer, you're trying to type it and the words don't come out. It's like, who am I? What have I done? So always feel free to call us or email us and we can ask you those questions about, okay, well, did you receive any awards? Did you study? Did you learn your artistry through community workshops? What kind of experiences have you had? Whose other work have you been involved with? You know, some people might go, oh, I've done none of this. I don't know what to say in this. There's always something to say. You are doing your art for a reason. You're in a particular part of your journey. There's always something to say in your bio. So if you get stuck, give us a call or an email. And really value your contribution in the arts landscape. If you are really stuck, maybe think about the themes or influences or who else you've worked with. However, really state, you know, what you've done and why you're doing it. try to avoid using technical jargon to unpack the nuances of your art form. So that's in relation to thinking about who's reading your bio. As Phil was talking about, it might not be someone who understands the intricacies of your art form. So it's a summary. It's a summary of what you've done and who you are, and why you want to do what you do. Think about connecting you to what you are, what you do. So for example, a blind artist might talk about wanting to use audio description in their work as a creative development tool. So that makes sense. This is who they are. This is what they're doing. There's a relationship there. But essentially, another tip for writing a bio is to talk to your friends or family or colleagues and go, who do you think I am? If you do get stuck with it. I'm happy to leave it there. If you've got any questions, happy to ask them, but be assertive in your bio. It's your chance to sell yourself, and we're happy to help you sort of string your thoughts together. Think of it as a narrative. You're telling people who you are. So
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. That's really great. I think bios are always more challenging than we ever imagined them to be.
Yeah.
But what I'm really getting from you and from Phil is this is all about storytelling. That's what we're
storytelling,
doing.
and it's self-reflection, and it's a chance to sell yourself.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tanya, or our colleague Tanya, and who's going to talk to us about ABNs and auspicing and various other things. So over to you, Tanya.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, I just wanted to add something about auspicing. So auspicing is where another organisation applies and submits the grant on your behalf. So it's really useful for people who don't yet have an ABN for themselves or their art practice, or for collectives who don't have an ABN in the group's or collective's name. It's also really useful if, say, you're on a DSP and you want to be paid your grant in smaller instalments. So Arts Access Victoria is absolutely here for deaf and disabled artists who would like to be auspiced by us. We only auspice grants for deaf and disabled artists or disability-led collectives. So you're very most welcome to contact us to discuss being auspiced by Arts Access Victoria. For these grants, it would mean that we would have to work on the application together, because we would be submitting it under our Smarty Grants login. So you try, if you can, to get in contact with us a few days before the application closes in order for us to facilitate that process. We do charge a fee for auspicing. That covers our financial management of the grant for you, administration, and you get covered by our public liability insurance too. The fee for auspicing for these grants, for the full amount of $7,500 for individual deaf and disabled artists, is $750, and we just take that out of the grant, or $1,500 for groups, which is industry standard fees. So if you're auspiced by us, so we'll submit that application, and if you're successful, we'll receive the funds, the grant funds, and then we will talk to you about how you would like to receive your artist fee. We would pay any suppliers directly on your behalf. So it's really taking care of that financial side of the grant for you. I just wanted to make one note about the financials on the grant. So as mentioned, it doesn't ask for a budget, so it's worthwhile having a look, previewing the application form, and in that financial section, seeing all the different categories of the grant that you might allocate money to. And so I'd strongly suggest thinking about paying yourself. And I know there's a question in the chat about paying yourself an hourly rate. I think everybody assessing this grant and working on this grant wants to make sure artists are paid well for what they do. So it would almost be compulsory for you to pay yourself in this project, unless you've got a good excuse for using the money for other costs. Definitely some of that portion has to go towards you paying yourself to do your artwork. And the other thing I just wanted to suggest is that in this grant, it has a section where you write in the amount that you're applying for. I would suggest that everyone thinks about putting the full amount of the grant, $7,500 for deaf and disabled applicants, individual applicants, or $12,500 for deaf and disabled led collectives, because I think if that's the allocation of money that's there to be applied for, I think about what that money could do for you in your practice. And I think I'll throw back to Caroline for any last questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Tanya. We've got quite a few questions in the chat, so I'm just going to throw them at the team. I'm just going to read them out, and I will bring individuals in to potentially answer questions that are coming at us. So the first one that came a little while ago was from Liam about, would travel costs related to the project be reasonable in the other section, a reasonable purpose under other? Any thoughts on that? My gut on this would be that if it's travel within the state, and it's absolutely, sorry, Phil, you looked like you were going to agree with me.
Right, yep.
Yep. Yeah, if it's about taking your art and it's definitely related to the project and that's what you need support with, I would say absolutely it's reasonable within the grant, so long as it's within the state. The next question Tanya's already touched on is about paying yourself. We definitely want to make sure that you pay yourself well in your application. So please make sure that you do that. Michael posed the question, a general question, which is a really good one, about why do ordinary businesses like cafes and gyms only have to prove a decline in income to receive government support, but arts businesses have to come up with a project? We are with you on the frustration of this. We need to have a budget, partners, measurable outcomes. I think the good thing, Michael, about this is that it's pretty light touch. So you don't need letters of support. You don't need necessarily a measurable outcome. And we just need to say how COVID's impacted on us. So, but it is frustrating. I feel your frustration in the difference between. Another question, Anya, also, I reckon, I hope I'm saying your name right. I would check with Australia Council. I don't know of any. I don't know if Tanya or Phil or Sarah know of any grants that are available to temporary residents from New Zealand, but maybe you could be in contact with us directly or check out Australia Council.
I wonder if the Actors Benevolent Fund or some of those ones might be consideration. We'll get back to you. We'll have a little look around.
Ruth asked, does this grant require acquittal? Tanya, do you want to talk to that one, or Phil?
Yeah, it's Tanya here. I haven't got a copy of what the acquittal will be yet from Regional Arts Victoria. Last year, the acquittal was almost identical to the application form. So it was a series of checkboxes on how you ended up spending the money and a small section of written text or video response of how the project went for you. Yeah, I'm anticipating that it will be the same, but we can get back to you to clarify on
that. Judith asked the question, could multidisciplinary architectural designers apply, who also do other design related work such as drawing, digital artwork, and so on? My gut again says yes, architecture is is an art form. I mean, that probably is an Amelia question, but I feel like Amelia listed a lot of things that fitted under this banner. So yeah, I think probably the answer to that one is yes.
Yeah, I think it's Phil here. Adding to what Caroline said there, I feel like if you are a creative, it's not just a creative; it could be producers, etc., for this grant round. If you really think you feel COVID's really had an effect on your practice or your work within the arts industry, by all means, go for it. I think absolutely.
Yes, I'm just going to check in. I've got one more question, and then I just want to check in with Amber about if we go for 3 more minutes. Is that okay? Yeah, great. Thank you. So Warren has asked, can the grant be part of multiple grant applications? Say the project costs up to 20,000 and you've applied to numerous funders to cover it all. Is that okay? And can you use the money in that way? Tanya, do you have a gut to this?
I don't think it would be eligible, but I would be thinking strategically and thinking, are there separate people working on this project to separate aspects of it that could apply for their own contributions to the project? And so is there parts of the bigger project that can be, kind of segmented or bitten off that could potentially be applied for by, separate members of an artistic team? But in terms of individual artists, you only sort of get one shot with this one. I'll look into it for you, though. It's a great one. I'll get back to you on that one.
I feel like this is about really being able to sustain people to continue their artistic practice. So I think this is, it feels different, even though it can be project focused. It feels like it's much more just about you surviving as an artist and not needing to get a job as a telemarketer. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels a bit like that to me, but I could be wrong. So if you can look into that, Tanya, and get back to Woz, that would be amazing. Thanks, Woz. That was hypothetical as a question. Okay, Ruth has asked, I received a small one-off amount from the Vic Gov Live Performance Support Program. Does that make me ineligible? I think, Tanya, does that go back to the list of things that you outlined before that people could look at?
The list of ones is more business specific. As long as you're not asking funding for the same project that you've been funded for by Creative Victoria, say this year or last year, you are eligible for these grants. It does ask you in the application to list any recent funding you have received, and they will cross-check that, I believe, with Creative Victoria. So I think you have to state that in your application, but it shouldn't mean you're ineligible.
And our very last question is from Viv, it's from Anna. Can two artists, who are both sole traders, both apply for the exact same project? Presumably those two are going to work together on the same project, but they're going to apply separately.
That we might need to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's an Amelia question.
Yeah.
I think that's an Amelia question.
Yeah, my gut says it's okay, but I don't want to say that out loud, though. We'll get back to you on that one, I think.
And I'm just going to answer Hashim's question, which how do you nominate an assessor if it's your first time applying? Is there a reference or a list for the assessors? As an applicant, you just tick the assessors that you want where you want your application to be assessed, and then it gets allocated by Amelia. Yeah, there's no list for the assessors to kind of say these people must or not. They'll be assessing based on what they're reading and or seeing. So yeah, I just want to say thank you all for your time this afternoon. As Aisha is telling us in the chat, the transcript and the video and answers to the questions that you're asking will be sent out to everybody that's been here. Thank you all for joining us, and please be in touch if we can be of any support or help. And best of luck with everything. I've got everything crossed for all of you. Get applying. There's loads of money. It's all got your name on it. So we don't want to leave any of it there or give it to anybody else. We want to make sure that it goes to deaf and disabled artists. So get applying and good luck. Thanks for coming. See you later.